You are listening to the SDSU podcast presented by the East Village Times with your hosts Andre Hagberdian and Paul Garrison. Welcome, listeners, back to another episode of the SDSU podcast. I'm your host, Andre Hagberdian, joined as always by Mr. Paul Garrison. What's going on, Paul?
Going on, Andre? How's everything doing for you, brother?
We're doing good, pretty good. It's almost March. I think we're literally 3 hours away from it being March and March Madness, the greatest month of the year, some would say. If you're a sports fan, you probably believe it.
It's a leap year. It's a leap year, right? I mean, that's just kind of crazy. It's kind of crazy. I got a leap year question for you guys in a little bit. We start getting into it, man. But we got our guy Johnny here, man.
Yeah.
What's up, guys?
Welcome.
How's it going?
Johnny, tell us a little bit about yourself. I know you're one of the newest EVT writers helping us cover San Diego State sports, but tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, what's up, guys? I just joined, covering football and baseball so far, but excited to cover all Aztec sports. Born and raised here in San Diego, so growing up playing football and a little bit of baseball. I've just been a big sports fan. All San Diego teams, all Aztec sports: football, baseball, basketball, and then we used to have NFL teams, but the Padres and all that. We got plenty of sports here in San Diego to root for, especially the Aztec teams. Some very exciting teams recently. And a little bit about myself and what I do is I sell a lot at a lot of different sports cards and memorabilia shows. So my thing is I have a website, sdsportsmem.com, where I like to I collect different San Diego sports memorabilia and just kind of like to share the history of San Diego sports through different memorabilia items that belong to players or teams like that, and just enjoy San Diego sports, like I think all of us.
Yeah, I think that's how I first kind of became, following you on social media, was through that account. It's really cool just to some of the stuff that you've posted about and that you have from so many years ago. It's really cool stuff. And I'm a big memorabilia guy, but I don't feel like I've collected enough through the years, through moving and stuff like that. So it's really cool what you do.
Yeah, it's really fun, and it's a great way to learn, because obviously in the present, websites like you guys that cover these sports, it's fun to keep up with the current, but I really enjoy the past and the history too. Yeah.
And then, I mean, Andre, like, could you be more impressed with Johnny's start? I mean, the variety of the covers that he's provided, from giving a wide receiver from Austin, Texas, who committed to San Diego State, and being able to share that story. I mean, you want to talk about Aztec fast. I mean, this kid from, Johnny's article is just like ridiculous, right? I mean, I was blown away
about Heath McCree.
Yeah, Heath McCree.
Yep.
Heath McCree. I was blown away by, Johnny tracking down the head coach at Westlake out in Texas and saying, we've never had a guy this fast. And you're like, Westlake is like, I mean, if you were to go around and you were to say, name a Texas high school, like that one's going to come up, a lot as a high school that people know around the country. And so, like, I thought that was pretty amazing to be able to, kind of do that. You've done a couple baseball recaps and been a part of that coverage. You knocked out, I think, your first one. I mean, just to soft toss everything. You gave a where is the special teams at for San Diego State, like right now, and completely nailed that. And then today, I think you were the first article, period, about the San Diego State schedule reveal. And you didn't just say, like, here's the times and dates, but you went and gave a little bit of a synopsis into, the things that are taking place at San Diego State's opponents. And so, like, if you had a chance to get that, I'm sure East Village Times and look at it. But I mean, bro, it's pretty impressive, like start into all of this, brother.
Yeah, I appreciate it. It's fun. I'm ready to dive in. Something I've been a fan of for a while, and then it allows me to reach even more San Diego fans. So I'm loving it so far, and no plans on slowing down.
Yeah, Paul and I have been looking to get somebody else in here, especially on the football side, because there's a lot. Like, there's what, 100 and plus players on the team. There's
Yeah.
every player has a story, every coach has a story,
Mhm.
and we've done, our part to try to tell some of those stories. But like, there's not enough time in the day. We all have full-time jobs, as you do as well, Johnny. So it's like having someone that can come in and be that third person and help fill in some of the gaps that we can't, I think, is something we've been looking for. So we definitely appreciate you on board.
You guys ready for my leap year question?
Oh yeah.
I got a leap year question. Here's my leap year question. Okay, so San Diego State football goes through its best, maybe argues but its best, whatever, like segment of its history under Rocky Long, who is the coach, longevity because he's an older guy, etc. Then he moves on, retires, becomes a defensive coordinator, whatever that is. Brady Hoke pops up, right? And it takes about a leap year cycle, and now he's gone.
Yeah.
You look around the Mountain West, and I mean, this was part of your article, Johnny. Like, that was like really enlightening. Was, I mean, Bronco Mendenhall, New Mexico. They're not playing them this year, but San Jose State, they're getting a new coach. You got new coaches at Boise State, new coaches at Wyoming. There's so many different new coaches that you could start pointing to. Do you think that San Diego State is going to kind of get onto like a leap year carousel with having to replace a coach every leap year? You know what I mean? Every 4 or 5 years, because that seems like what groups of 5 schools are having to do now with all the rules and all the ways that things are happening. Do you think that's where they're headed with all of this? Because I mean, it seems like, at least in my mind, that like with Sean Lewis, there's 1 of 2 ways that this thing ends up. Either he's great, and maybe Wisconsin and the places where he was, where he went to school, and those things start calling, and San Diego State's going to have to start competing with groups that have a lot bigger purses, and who knows where everything will be in 4 years. Or he's not successful, and then San Diego State is going to be looking for somebody to replace him. So do you feel like that is, or do you feel like maybe there's a chance that they could find somebody long term and not be on that leap year kind of coaching carousel?
Hopefully not. I mean, well, first thing I think of when you mentioned Wisconsin, I like to think here in San Diego we have a little bit more of a pull factor with the weather out here and things like that, where hopefully he'd want to be in San Diego. But I don't know. I think when he just came from Colorado, obviously, and the landscape of college football is changing with NIL and all these different opportunities for college players. And I feel like Deion Sanders, at least, like as far as like social media and like being out there, was kind of the forefront of that. Bringing in players, you'd have like the Lambos and things like that. So hopefully, I'm hoping Sean Lewis kind of took a little bit, and we saw that they brought in some good talent from the transfer portal. I'm hoping that he's able to kind of build something. He's came in and brought in a pretty solid coaching staff. So hopefully, I don't want to get into a cycle like that, the leap year changing coaches, but I'm hoping that he's able to kind of plant some roots here in San Diego, with NIL and kind of his personality. From what I've seen so far, at his appearances and stuff, he seems like a very outgoing, outspoken guy, and I'm hoping that he plants his roots here, with the NIL landscape shifting, that he's able to continue some great recruiting and bring in some awesome talent to San Diego.
It's an interesting question because 4 years is a long time.
It's a long time.
Football.
Yes,
And
it is.
Sean Lewis loves it here.
Mm-hmm.
And I think he's very, very happy to be the head coach of San Diego State. But if the next leap year, we're sitting here and he's still the coach of San Diego State, it probably has not gone as well as he wanted it to go here.
Interesting. Yeah. Interesting.
That's just because offensive-minded coaches get poached from G5
That's a great
Power
point.
5
That's
so
a great
much more
point.
than defensive coaches.
Yeah.
Right.
And like if he's here 4 years from today, doesn't mean that the teams have been bad, because if they've been really bad, maybe he got fired, which I don't think so. That means they've been good, but they haven't been special, maybe to the point where Power 5 has looked for him. But like, I don't if I had to make a prediction, he would not be here. He would not be the head coach of San Diego State on the next leap year.
Wow. Wow. No, and I mean, I think
For
that's
positive reasons. For
100%,
Yeah.
100%, 100%. And I think that, you know, it's this kind of interesting world that San Diego State sports has been in, right? Where you have the two major sports, and not just the two major sports, but you can go to other ones as well, baseball, etc., where you do get these the head coaches that have these long tenures. The assistants go and become the head coaches, you know, and so it gives this like continuity. And San Diego State has been kind of this oasis in the middle of what has been happening everywhere else in college football. And JD Wicker, to his credit, has figured out how to, and figured out, and the, you know, other administration has figured out how to kind of break the trend. But I mean, you know, you look at like UNLV as a great example, and again, you know, I think they're very similar schools, right? I mean, they have great budget. I think San Diego State probably has better support, but they have boosters probably more in UNLV than they do in San Diego State, etc. And they had a good year this last year, go to the Mountain West Championship. But before that, it was the 4-year, 5-year carousel where they had to bring in a new coach all the time. And, you know, San Diego State just, that hasn't been them. And I think that even with Brady Hoke taking over for Rocky Long, I think it didn't feel like, it felt like more continuity. It didn't feel like even there was a new coach coming in. And obviously the success that they had in year 2, the first full season, you know, that he was the head coach kind of even added to that. But I just think it's a really interesting aspect of it because, you know, if there is something special, to Johnny's point, that, you know, like elsewhere beyond, there's like all of the basketball assistants, they could go and get more of a salary somewhere else. But so many of them are staying at San Diego State because it offers them things that money can't buy. And to Johnny's point, there might be something that really is attractive. But I think if you look at the script that's playing out, I agree with Andre, which is why, oddly enough, I mean, you know, if it wasn't for this weird environment, this would be kind of a weird question. But I mean, JD Wicker was maybe still like catching his breath after announcing Sean Lewis. And here we are in the locker room, and I'm asking him, hey, so did you guys have a good severance package? Because if this works out, like you got to use the money that you're using to be able to go and find the next guy.
A buyout package.
Buyout. Is there a buyout? Is there a buyout? Do they have to do that? Are you going to
did we ever get the details on the buyout?
I don't have it on
I don't think we did.
He said it's competitive and, you know, all of those kinds of things. But anyway, I was just thinking about that. Is this being a leap year? It was just felt like the right question. Like, okay, so leap year, is this that's what coaching in major college football has become. Even at the highest level. I mean, even at the high, I mean, Ohio State has gone through different coaches. They're calling for, you know, Dabo Swinney, and they're calling for his head because he hasn't won in the last couple of years since Lawrence left. I mean, that's just kind of the thing. But I don't know, just thought it was an interesting question, and I think it's one of those interesting things. I mean, I think, you know, the other part of this is I think that you look at some of the major jobs that are on the West Coast that have, and there's a lot of coaching changes that have taken place recently. And so like they're going to give a little bit of leeway, but of course he made his hay in Kent State. And so that whole neck of the woods and being able to pay attention to what's happening. And I mentioned Wisconsin because that's where he went to school.
Right.
And so it's just an interesting question, but could we turn our attention to the schedule?
Yeah.
Pretty cool. What do we got there?
Well, what's interesting is last year they had 2 bye weeks in a 3-week period.
Mm-hmm.
It's not as bad this year, but now they have 2 in a 4-week period before their 6th game of the season. So, or before their 7th game of the season. So, the bye weeks are coming early again. You know, Brady Hoke last year when the schedule came out said, we don't care when the bye week is. But then when that second bye week hit, he was asked, he was like, yeah, it's kind of not really that great to have 2 in 3 weeks. So like, okay, we finally got the real answer. And so I don't know how Sean Lewis will feel, but they've got they play 3 non-conference games. They play a week 0 game, which is why they have 2 byes.
Right.
They get a 1 bye before they go to Central Michigan. Obviously that's a long road trip. But then, they get their 7 conference games and then the Washington State game, which is kind of a different, it's a new year, right, in the Mountain West where they're playing only 7 conference games because they're trying to get
Right.
Oregon State and Washington game in there.
Right.
Johnny, you put out your article today. What stood out to you when the schedule came out?
Yeah, it's sort of interesting when you look at their home and away. They have 2 home games, followed by an away game, and then a bye and an away game. And then after those back-to-back away games, it's kind of back and forth. They go home away until they then again have 2 away games before finishing the season with Air Force, a Mountain West opponent at the end. I like the matchup against Oregon State and Washington State. It'll be a good test. When Lewis was at Colorado, he lost to both of those teams previously, but it's sort of like when you look at the conference play, those teams always play each other a little tougher. They know the opponents a little bit better. Aztecs fans obviously always love the outside competition. I remember the game years ago, like one of the more memorable games I remember was watching that Stanford game against the Pac-12 opponent there. So those games are always fun, and I think those are pretty good matchups for Lewis's first year as head coach against those Pac-12 teams. They finished in pretty similar in the Pac-12 standings as SDSU did within the Mountain West. They're both kind of the bottom half of the conferences. So I'm excited to see how we match up against those teams. And then Mountain West play is always exciting. Every game there is fun to watch.
Yeah, the what's interesting is the TV schedules aren't out,
Right.
which means that some of these games could be moved to Friday when that happens. And I was looking at this. Somebody asked me, what games do you think might be moved to Friday? And
Whoa. Somebody?
Dennis Ryan.
Thank you. Yeah, Dennis Ryan, our EVT football scout. Dennis Ryan was asking about this question. Yeah.
And the last 3 years, the Boise game has been on a Friday. It was in 21, it was at 9 a.m. on Black Friday at Carson for the winner to go to the Mountain West Championship game. So I remember waking up at my parents' house, at 6 a.m. and driving to Carson and covering that game. And then, the at Boise game was the game right before Jeff Blinsky was fired. That was a second half meltdown. And then last year, it was obviously the Ashton Jeanty breaking 20 tackles and rushing for 200 yards. So
5 yards.
Yeah.
That could be a game that the Mountain West loves to move, and the TV networks love to have on a Friday. So we'll see, but I think that's interesting. The point about the Pac-12 is up until 2 years ago, San Diego State had the best record against the Pac-12. I think with a minimum of 6 games, that they're 7-1 in their last 8 games. They've lost 4 in a row in the last 2 years, and they've all been blowouts. None of them. Oregon State game was actually the closest one. I think that was a 17-point game. So even though it's a Pac-2 now, they're at least playing both of those teams. It's an opportunity to get back, playing better against the Pac-12, and then obviously Cal is an ACC team now, which is really weird to say, but it's still a Power 5, right?
Sure.
So and then Central Michigan, I don't know how many Aztec fans are going to be making that trip to Mount Pleasant, Michigan.
Heck yeah, bro.
Yeah, but at least it's in September, and it shouldn't be that cold, right? So I don't know. It's a good schedule. It's a good schedule for the
good schedule
for a first-year head coach. Yeah,
I know. I think it's a really good schedule. I mean, I think that I think one of the fears for everything that's taking place, with conference realignment and stuff like that, is that San Diego State is not going to be able to have a really good schedule. And if you look at the schedule, it's kind of like what you would want. You got 3 traditional Power 5 teams. I think if you just say Texas A&M instead of saying Texas A&M Commerce, that sounds way better. But I mean, I think it's a perfect game, like it's a perfect game to kind of get the Sean Lewis era like off and any kind of bugs and those kinds of things as a first year coach. And so I think it's really good in that regard. I actually think the bye weeks are perfect. I think that, like, again, going back to that first year head coach kind of thing, you'd love to be able to have like extra bye weeks to kind of fine tune things and get things the way they need to be for a group that is not going to be completely familiar with their head coach. And so you get these 2 extra weeks to kind of put these things together. And again, I look forward to researching more about Texas A&M Commerce. But you'll forgive me, Texas A&M Commerce fans who also watch the SDSU podcast. The 1 or 2 of you who are out there who do that. But that's a bye week, right? I mean, Steve Spurrier used to talk about that those were the preseason games, right?
Yeah.
And so you have in the first 7 weeks, 8 weeks, you have essentially 3 bye weeks where the coaching staff can lay out like another spring practice, a whole nother spring, but like built into the season. And then you hope that they are playing their best football towards the end of the year and they're really rolling. And so for those final 6 weeks, like they're at their peak. And so I think there's things that you like about the way the schedule is. Again, you assume, again, you don't know, but Wyoming's got a new coach. But the coach is a holdover from the other staff. And so the idea and thought that he's going to be very similar in style, which means they're going to be physical, they're going to run the football, they're going to do those things. Well, you don't mind. You prefer to get that game in Laramie at the part of the schedule that is, as opposed to when it's snowing. The flip side of it is Utah State's going to throw the ball all over the field, except that it might be 30 degrees at that game, 25 degrees. And so now that could play an advantage, although San Diego State in the Aztec Fast, like what does that look like? Although, again, Sean Lewis is from Kent State, so the cold shouldn't be as big of a deal. But again, you would prefer if you were going to have Wyoming first but you were going to have Utah State in the cold, like you're going to prefer that. I have rarely seen a game where San Diego State was more outclassed. I mean, Andre's talking about those 4 losses by blowouts. I didn't feel like they were horribly outclassed against UCLA. Yeah, the score got away from them, but you complete a pass to a running back late in the game, and you can make a game of this. But they were completely outclassed against Air Force last year. It was brutal. And the academies, for all of the things that they do, they're great early and then as the season goes on, typically, may not happen next year, they wear on and they wear out. And San Diego State, of course, a couple of years ago lost to Air Force in San Diego at the last game of the season. But again, that's what you would prefer. You would prefer to see the buzzsaw that is Air Force at the end than you would at the beginning. I mean, sitting here a couple
But
hours
that game,
from March,
that game was 13-3.
right? It was
Because
exactly.
of the offense, because of the lack of offense. Yeah.
Exactly. So I think there's a lot to like about San Diego State's schedule, how it sets up. Even getting Oregon State the second game of the season. Oregon State will have next to no idea what San Diego State is going to be running offense. They won't. They won't. They're gonna be very vanilla against Texas A&M Commerce, and the first real full Sean Lewis is coming out against the Beavers. And the Beavers are there's gonna be probably a couple of touchdowns or 10 points or something like that are gonna be scored simply because there's no tape on the Aztecs and what Aztec Fast is. And so it shapes up good in that regard. Johnny, you talked about it, the Idaho quarterback who's coming and transferring to, well, the Idaho transfer is probably going to be really good game 5, but maybe not game 2.
Right.
So
that early on. Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, those are my general thoughts on the schedule.
Yeah. No, I like I like a couple of our my second article I wrote about the transfer portal. We had a couple good D linemen on defense. We lost a few key players in the secondary. The guys who we brought in from the transfer portal, we had as downgrades so far, but our two upgrades were our D line. So I'm kind of excited to see how our defensive line does against that game against Oregon State and that quarterback there.
Yeah, just a few days ago they signed another JUCO guy, Miles Goocake from Mount Sacramento College, I think.
Yeah.
He's a small guy, 240. He's more of an edge guy, but another guy that can come in and compete for the defensive line.
Yeah.
And I'm gonna have to get used to that. I mean, sincerely, how much easier was our job to be able to be like, okay, it's the second signing day, and they're gonna be done adding players. And now it just seems like, you know what I mean? Like every 15 minutes there's a new player being added.
Yeah.
You know, and then trying to track down when they're actually going to be on campus, and then you know there's the coaching step, right? I mean, it doesn't just stop there. You know, we are like, okay, well, they're going to retain Boj Filio want to, and we're like, hey, let's okay, great. What a great to bring him back. And we got all the things from McElroy, who talks about, you know, how much he's connected with him. We're like, okay, this is cool. This is why they're keeping him. And now he's at San Jose State. So then they bring in a new guy from Washington. And we're like, okay, well, what a good hire. I mean, listen, this guy's got a resume that you can't believe. And it turns out we weren't the only people who thought that, because the people apparently at Baylor thought this guy's got a really good resume. And so now it seems like there is, and these were the names that were always there, that the Idaho, and again, I can't confirm this, is just what the reports are, that Idaho's interior defensive line coach is going to be coming down to San Diego State, because of course Idaho's defensive coordinator is now the edge rush coach at San Diego State, and so that's not confirmed, but those are the reports. And it's just such an interesting world about like the movement, and it's pretty crazy.
Yeah, his name is David Lose.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know much about Lose. He played at Oregon State as an offensive lineman, I think in the late 90s, early 2000s. And he's, you know, obviously bounced around and been a coach in a lot of places. So we'll see what he brings to the table. You know, spring camp starts March 12th, so we're less than 2 weeks away. And then the spring game is gonna be April 20th at Snapdragon. So it's pretty soon. I think we're gonna have a lot of people getting out to Snapdragon to see Aztec Fest in person. You know, what's interesting is Sean Lewis, you know, during his at the signing day special at Snapdragon, he basically put out an open invite to the fans to come out to practice.
I don't think that was him. That wasn't him.
Yeah, he did.
I think it was Matt Johnson.
No, Sean Lewis did.
I think it was an assistant. I think it was an assistant who said, "We'll see you out there at practice."
Yeah, I thought Sean Lewis did too, or maybe he did it at a different press conference or event.
Okay, no. Okay.
I'm curious as to how that will play out, if that actually really will be open. I mean, spring camp, you're not preparing for an opponent, so you're not necessarily practicing plays that you're going to use in 3 days, and coaches get paranoid about, you know, spies and people getting their plays and telling the opponents so the opponents are ready for it. I think at spring camp, you're not really worried about that, so maybe it's a little bit more open for spring camp, but we'll see.
Yeah, interesting.
Yeah, no, I think it's pretty interesting about how all that kind of stuff is going to work out. You know, staying on the football side of things, you know, we'll get into this. I mean, you can talk about March. I mean, we're getting there to spring camp. It's around the corner, March 12th. What position battles realistically are you most interested in paying attention to when it comes to spring football?
Johnny, you can go first.
Yeah, I like the
veteran move. I'm sorry. That's a veteran move. You know, let Johnny jump first. I'll think about it a little bit. I
know, man. Put me on the spot. Now that I really want to see how things shake out at receiver. You know, we brought in a couple great receivers that I covered in the transfer portal article. You know, McClure from UCLA, and then Louis Brown from Colorado State. Both very exciting players. Feed right into that Aztec fast offense. Louis Brown was mocking the Shador when they played them in that big game.
Right.
So and I kind of like that. Hope that transitions over into the play here and kind of see how that goes. So I'm more of a, when I watch football, SDSU is known for their hard hitting defense, but I'm excited to kind of see and Coach Lewis pointed it out, and as a fan of the history of Aztec football, and I included this quote, made sure to in my my schedule release article, that he kind of paid homage to the Air Coryell days. I mentioned about how he's excited to bring back that offense that lights up the scoreboard. So bringing in receivers like this, it'll be cool to see how they kind of progress through the spring and see how they do during the season. It could be exciting to watch at Snapdragon.
Before I answer it, like, other than Garrett Fountain at one defensive end, there's probably not another starter that's already like in place. Like every position probably has, because they lost so many people from last year, so many of the starters, like
On the line?
on the entire team.
Really? You don't think
Yeah.
Alu has the one of those spots lined up?
In a different defense with a different scheme? I don't know.
Man, I think that the only question with, anyway, keep going.
I think quarterback, you have to mention that.
Yeah.
Right? Like, you got 4 guys that none of them have thrown more than 17 passes in a Division I game.
Mm-hmm.
So you got, I mean, you obviously you start and end with a quarterback. But cornerback is also really intriguing because other than Chris Johnson, everybody's new.
Yeah.
And there's true freshmen that want to play, right? Isaiah Buxton enrolled early. He wants to play. Tayton Byer enrolled early. He wants to play. Then you got Bryce Phillips. You've got some other guys here. Tavion Beasley, who had to sit out from transferring from Colorado and Jackson State. Obviously, Chris Johnson's still there. So, like, that's a position I think is really intriguing because other than Chris Johnson, we haven't seen any of those guys in Aztec uniforms. But as I said, almost every position is going to be an open battle, much so, more so than it has been in the past few years, just because there's so few returning starters.
No, and I think everything that's completely true. When I think about what I'm most interested in, I'm really interested in the scheme. And I know that I'm kind of cheating by not picking a position, but I'm really interested to see, not just like who's going to be in what pecking order, but like I'm really curious what kind of defensive end Garrett Fountain is. Do they, and again, their defensive coordinator, San Diego State's defensive coordinator, like, is he going to run a traditional 4-2-5? Is that really what he's going to do? And like, what does that look like? So do they have like the run stopping defensive end that would be kind of close to the Sam linebacker that they ran in the 3-3-5, but just kind of consistently always there? Is that what Garrett Fountain is? Or do they see more pass rushing skills, which means he's going to be on the other side? I'm really curious about, who is, so inside you got 2 defensive tackles. One of them is almost that for longtime fans of San Diego football, it's that almost that 3-4 nose tackle, that prototypical guy who's just there to take 2 blockers and make sure the linebackers are just free to be able to fly around. And then you have
Jamal Williams, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, exactly. It's a perfect example. 3rd round pick in the supplemental draft from Oklahoma State. Let's go. Come on. And you have that, and then you have kind of a smaller defensive tackle, which would be basically the guys who've been playing inside for the Aztecs for a long time, more athletic. You want them to move around. If you're going to do stunts, you're going to do all those kinds of things, twist. I mean, that's the guy that you're going to do that with. And so I'm curious to see if it'll fit that, where you have that space eating guy. Again, these are just questions. Will they play boundary field where you have the defensive lineman who is that bigger, stronger against the run? You're going to have that guy always on the field because there's so much room that you got to be able to account for. And so if they don't hold up, they could really blow you away. Or is it strong side, weak side? And so wherever the tight end is going to line up, that's where you're going to have that stronger defensive end who's going to be against the run. Super curious to that. I'm curious to see what it looks like, and again, where they have them and how they have the linebackers. I mean, one linebacker is, again, this is the 4-2-5 in its cliche way, and it's on the chalkboard. But you're going to have a guy who is a little bit more of a space eater, who can take on blockers, who's going to be there at the point of attack, and then you're going to have a smaller, more athletic, and just where do they spread the guys out? And how do they put them? I mean, you look at a guy like White, linebacker, White from Eastlake, and he played defensive line his entire time at Eastlake. Does he go onto the line and now he becomes that defensive end that is that strong point of attack, may not be your best pass rusher? Or is he that middle linebacker who's going to be taking on at the point of attack, and he's going to continue and he's going to stay there? How are they going to line them up? And then you go into the secondary, and it's like, okay, so it seems like there is still that Aztec position that there is the potential to have like somebody who would play kind of like a weak side 4-3 linebacker, but then also can be in coverage and do that. And it's like, okay, how do they line those guys up? Is this the year, like with new coaching staff and all that kind of stuff? Is New Zealand Williams in the mix over there, or is he still on that athletic smaller linebacker and who can run around, and they want that kind of thing from him and speed and things of that nature? And so I'm really curious about that. I think if I'm having to pick a position that I think is the most interesting, and to obviously pick ones that are different than what you said, I think that safety position is wildly entertaining. I thought Josh Hunter by the end of the year was arguably I'm not even gonna argue it. I think he was their best tackler. By the end of the year, I think he was the guy who you were the most sure was going to bring somebody to the ground. Does he have another step in him? I mean, they were publishing, guys who were running 20 miles an hour, and Josh Hunter, he loses the tape game everywhere else, but that dude can fly, and those numbers bear that out. Eric Butler, I mean, this guy's a playmaker. That's all you can say about him. Like every time that Eric Butler seems to be on the field, and I think it. I'm trying to remember if it didn't get into Johnny's article. PJ took this picture, and Eric Butler on a punt, his eyes are just lasered in on the punt block.
I know exactly which one.
Yeah,
it's a great shot. I'm like, go,
yeah.
PJ Payne-Bianco, he grabbed that. I mean, just like that perfect thing. But he blocked so many of those kicks and last year and made plays behind the line. And so he's like an incredibly exciting player. And there's so many other guys that you can point to that they brought in either through transfers, guys who maybe not had their best year, guys who were injured. Max Garrison, who obviously was been on here a lot. I mean, these are just guys I think from that position. I think that's really exciting. But also, what are they looking for? What are they looking for? Is it going to be strong side, free safety, normal kind of stuff in those other two? Is it going to be, kind of where they're interchangeable? I mean, what are they looking for? Who covers the slot? I mean, I think that's it. I think it's a huge question. And so it's more that schematic part of it than anything else that I'm really curious to watch as spring practice is coming up.
So you cheated and didn't
did.
really answer your own question.
It's my question though, so I get to. Yeah, no, you're right.
I wanted to add, I think the position that had the basically no turnover was running back.
Yeah.
Right? I think the top 4 guys are all back. Top 5 guys are all back. And then the only two new additions are true freshmen that likely aren't going to really be in the rotation anyway. But who's going to step up? Keenan Christian, a super senior. You got Jalen Armstead. Is he finally going to earn the coach's trust to be an every down back? Cam Davis. Are there plays in the spread offense that could utilize his catching abilities? Sheldon Canley, is he finally going to get a chance? Who am I forgetting? Martin Blake, turned in from a walk-on to a scholarship player. So that's probably another position to look for. Are they going to find one guy or two guys, or are they going to continue to, give 4 or 5 different guys carries? So that's another position.
Love it.
Kicker
And I think
too, another one.
go ahead, Johnny.
Or sorry, I was gonna give some love to the kickers on special teams. They're kind of an
Oh, come on. Okay,
aspect of the game.
so which one of the three of us wrote the special teams preview?
It was yeah, I'm excited about all aspects of special teams. Jay-Sean Polk is somebody I'm excited. That's another guy who can contribute at receiver too as well. When I turned on the tape from him at West Virginia, super shifty guy. He catches some slants and immediately turns upfield. Yards after catch is pretty incredible. And he's expected to help out in the return game. The Aztecs have kind of been spoiled at kicker, going from a Rise to Browning, and it'll be interesting. They brought in Tyler Pastula, who's a great punter, probably the best experience of the ones competing. And then we'll kind of see how Gabriel Placencia, Abraham Montano, and Zechariah Ramirez. That'll be an interesting one to see how that shapes up during the season.
No, absolutely, and I agree, and I will just say there's if for Aztec fans who've not gotten a chance, there's not much more fun thing to do at an Aztec practice than to watch Zechariah Ramirez punt, because and again, he's working out, so he's getting bigger and all this kind of stuff. But I mean, the first time I saw him, he legitimately looks like, oh, that's cool. I wonder which coach's son gets to watch practice today. That's nice that they gave him a 49 uniform. What's that about? And then he kicks the ball and it's like, and you're like, whoa, it makes the sound and the whole bit. And you see like why he's out there, because he just gets it all, But at running back, I think the thing that's also, again, this is just schematic parts of it. With the offense's changes that has happened in the last couple of years, what Jeff Hiklinski and what Jeff Horton and what Ryan Lindley asked their running backs to do was different than I think what Sean Lewis is going to ask his running backs to do. And what skill set is best to utilize that. And again, there's been evolution, and who knows what's going to happen with it, and how the things that we get to uncover and discover, just like anybody else. But like when you watch Kansas State, the running back almost looks like they're in a screen every time. There's so much movement and so much, because everyone's spread out, and so many defenders coming from different angles, and that it looks like a traditional screen in terms of the linemen are pulling, all that kind of stuff. And so that could be it. Who was best on the screen last year in terms of getting in space, making guys miss, shedding tackles and things like that. And so I think you can go there. Tight end, I think is fascinating.
Are you going to give us an answer to that question?
Martin Blake.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, it's Martin Blake. He caught, Martin Blake, like that's just what he excelled at. Is being able to do. I'm sorry, I thought it was just self-evident. And
I think Cam Davis is good in that regard too.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I agree, absolutely, without question. And so there's so much, I think that'll be interesting to see how that plays out. But anyway, tight end I think is interesting everywhere. As you say, there's so much, as you said at the very beginning, there's so many different spots that aren't there. And even guys that like you would expect to be like on the offensive line that you're expecting to be somewhere in the mix. You still have the question of like where does Ross Masuli play? I mean, where does he at? He was the center, but Miles Morale, like are they going to switch because that was the position that he was projected. And when you look at them, that looks like the right switch. Will that take place? Will that happen? And Christian Jones, this is a guy who is kind of the last man standing among all of the tackles that have been on San Diego State the last couple of years. Is he ready to take that next step? They clearly, the former staff, Mike Goff, they clearly believe that he was more suited to be a left tackle than Brandon Crenshaw Dixon, which is why they moved him to the right side. And they thought he was more suited athletically to be a left tackle than the transfer who went to Washington. Drew, I'm sorry as a party. Sorry for the pause. Drew's been on here, great guy. But they put him at right and then moved BCD to the other side. And so, like, of all the people who were on the roster last year that they thought could legitimately be like a prototypical great left tackle, it was Christian Jones. And does he realize that potential after, having that playing time, getting benched? What does that look like for him? How does he move that forward? So again, I just think that there's a ton out there, and none of them are going to be answered. I mean, if any of these positions are just like completely answered and you're just like, okay, this is obviously your best player, I think that's a boost for the Aztecs. But to expect that in 15 days and 2 scrimmages or whatever it is, like, I think it's a tall task and they're asking a lot. And so I think that, trying to all of us like get our minds around what are these schemes, what are they going to be doing, for me is the part that I'm most excited to see.
Yeah.
Should we shift gears to some baseball?
Are we allowed to? I mean, man, we've got a few weeks, man, without talking football. Is this okay?
Yeah,
You're maestro.
Yeah.
Let's do it.
People, I've seen more engagement on the baseball side on social media and the message boards than in previous years. I think the new head coach has something to do with that. A new freshman class that has some exciting players, but 3-5 start, a little disappointing. They start Mountain West play at Fresno State this weekend.
Yeah.
You guys have covered a few of the games, been there live.
Yeah.
I went to the opening game, I think, for about 4 innings before I walked over to the A house to catch the basketball game. What are your takes, through 8 games of the season?
A lot of fight. Some great young players stepping up, and making big plays early on. I remember the first game we covered, the opening day game. We had Jake Jackson there in the press conference after. He had a great game. Chris Canada, obviously not a freshman, but he's doing some great pitching. Jacob Riordona, he's done great. He had a great game when I was at the last one I covered against Missouri, which was a pretty exciting game to watch. It was kind of hard to keep up. I was writing my recap at the same time, and the Aztecs started off hot those first 3 innings, and that was a good win. But talking to Coach Cole after the games and the press conferences, he's happy that. I mean, obviously, it's disappointing to be 3-5, but each time I've talked with him, he's happy about the fight that the players are showing, especially with being such a young group. And the pitching's there, with Mountain West place starting.
Where's the pitching?
What's that?
Where's the pitching? I haven't seen it.
It's been pretty decent. Canada, he started off hot the first. So I've got to watch Canada the 2 games I've covered. Friday night started both games. He pitches great the first 3 innings. The first one I covered, the opener, he kind of got into a sticky situation there, and Jacob came in.
So you're seeing a lot of potential.
Bailed them out, but yeah, lots of potential. They come in, they're able to help each other out and kind of get through the games. Obviously, they haven't gotten to the number of wins that they would probably be happy with, but it definitely looks promising.
It's interesting because we'll see how this weekend goes, opening up Mountain West play, and it's it's kind of like they're putting this series here at the beginning, and then it's going to be back to non-conference. But you could make an argument that San Diego State has given away every one of these games that they've lost. To Johnny's point, they lost 2 out of 3 in the opening series. They won the last game 7-1. But the other two games, they were either in the lead or tied. One went to extra innings, the other one, they were tied in the 8th after being down by a whole bunch. You saw a very similar thing against Cal State Bakersfield, I believe it was, and where they went down, they got a grand slam from McCombs, go up 5-4, give up the lead and lose late. You know, they just played their first road game against Irvine on Tuesday, and you know they score 3 runs in the bottom of the or the top of the first, and then they give up like 7 runs in 1 innings. And I think the frustrating part for Aztec fans is their walks, hits Batman, and errors. And so there's just this sloppy baseball that's being played. And the script of the season coming in, you know, making our previews look terrible, is it was like, hey man, where they got experience is it's pitching. Like that's where they have experience, and they're going to be having all these freshmen. And so it's going to take a while for the hitters, but the pitching can hopefully carry them. And they're going to have, you know, 4-3, 3-2 games and things like that. And it's been the complete opposite. Their hitting has been far better. They have had both freshmen of the weeks in the Mountain West so far. And Jake Jackson, as you mentioned before, in the great opening series that he had against Portland, Colby Turner, was just sizzling like right now. And he's you know he's hit the whole year. He already has 2 triples on the year. I mean, just like, you know, like legit stuff. McCombs, who we talked about, is another freshman.
2 grand slam.
2 grand slams. I mean,
Yeah, it is 2, huh?
Yeah, he has 2 grand slams at one point, like when he got the night where they got this. I mean, you know, it was the weirdest thing, the weirdest game. They were playing at the end of the Tony Gwynn legacy. That's not the end, but the second game. I think that end. You know, they're down going into the 9th, but because it's a tournament, San Diego State was the visiting team. So they're at home, but they're the visiting team. They get down to their final strike, they get a double, and then McCombs comes up. So on their home field, they go down, they start 6-4 down in the 9th, and then they end up winning 11-6 because they put 7 runs there. And so it's just the script's flipped. Their offense has been better than their defense. It'll be interesting to see as more of these young guys get at bats, what the scouting reports are going to start showing on them and how the adjustments are, you know, inevitably going to come. But you like it. I mean, you like that this is what they're able to do on the offensive side. But the pitching, you know, I agree. Their pitching has been decent at the beginning of the game, with the exception of the Irvine game. And with their 3 primary starters, but man, they can't find the strike zone. They're incredibly wild. They hit all kinds of batters. I think that first game with Chris Canada, they got a lead on the Aztecs, and they were being no hit. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah,
and
I
so
texted you right before I left. I'm like, hey, no hitters still intact, even though they were losing.
Yeah. So anyway, so I think that's the part of it. But you know, I think if you're looking at a rhyme and a reason to everything that they're doing, the rhyme and the reason is that they want to be better. They want to be better at the end of the year than they are now, and allowing all these young guys to play, finding, you know, that 4th starter, being able to find how the bullpen is going to shake out. You know, like they've had a couple of guys who've come in relief and been really, really good. And maybe that's going to be their spot. And, you know, they had, like, as example, they had a Riza who came in relief, has been really good. They started him 1 game, wasn't as great as it, but then he went back in relief and he was really good. So he looks like he could be in one of those high leverage relief kind of situations. So, you know, I think that they're finding it, but I think it's exciting baseball. But the idea that they're going to like build to the end of the year, because they got to win the conference tournament, which they're hosting. San Diego State's hosting this year at Tony Gwynn Stadium, is great and all, but you know, the conference season starts now, and so they're going to have to grow up a little bit. Fresno State, again, they're kind of middling there, had a pretty good series, I think, against Fullerton, on the road in their last one. And so it starts in earnest. But I think overall, It's you like the fight, but you just when we talked to Coach Cole in the offseason, he talks about you got to get first pitch strike. You got to get first pitch strike. That's really important to get a first pitch strike. Well, he was saying that because they were wild. I didn't know. You didn't know that at the time. You didn't know that that's why that was the message. But now you clearly see that was the message is that these guys can't find the strike zone. And the flip side of not being able to find the strike zone is they have so many strikeouts. They are striking out the opposition at an incredible clip. And if they can figure out how to keep that same unhittableness, is that a word? Their inability to thank you. Got past the censor. And limit those walks, limit the hit batsmen, limit the errors. I think there's potential for this to be a good team. And to Coach Cole, his prediction, get us into a tournament. And if they get into a tournament and these big glaring mistakes that they're making now, even if it's only for a couple of games, stop. Suddenly they can play above their head because right now it's mistakes that are killing the Aztecs.
Yeah.
To put stats to what both of you guys said, the pitchers are only allowing a batting average of 206.
Gosh.
And a slugging of 304.
Yeah, they should not have a losing record.
But you got 53 walks.
Great. To how many? How many of the Aztecs walked?
26.
That's crazy.
More than double.
Yeah.
And then they've hit 24 batters in 8 games, which is 3 per game.
Yeah.
And I looked it up. The NCAA Division I record is 99 hit batsmen by a pitching staff in a season. And those are over 50 games. So that's
they're on pace.
2 per game.
Geez.
So they're on pace to break that record by like 50, right? If they keep up 3 hits per game, which you would think that's gonna come down, but is it gonna come down to the point where they don't break that 99 record? I don't know, but that's what if you've had a chance to talk to Coach Cole after the games, like what is the explanation for why they're so wild?
I asked that exact question. That was the question that I asked him. I said how is that you have, he's unhittable. I mean, Chris Canada, to Johnny's point, he's unhittable. Like literally the opposition had a better opportunity to hit pitches by leaning into the ball and getting hit and put to first base than they did putting a ball in play. I mean, he's filthy. They don't have any idea what's coming up there. It's moving all over the place. But I mean, how is that possible? And his response is that that he thinks that maybe they're being a little bit too fine with it. That they're trying, that they got to kind of trust the defense a little bit. But that's just kind of what baseball is. Baseball's unpredictable that way. But I mean, it's been, like I said, it's been such this stark crazy thing that they're going with. And the flip side, you got any stats for the offense?
Yeah, the offense is hitting 260 and slugging 404.
Yeah.
But because they aren't walking very much, their on-base percentage is only 333. What's crazy is the on-base percentage the pitching staff is giving up is 47 points higher at 380.
Yeah, that's nuts.
Because of all the walks and the hit batsmen, despite only giving up 204 batting average. So, but the home runs, I mean, they've hit, how many home runs have they hit here? They've only hit 5 home runs, but only given up 2. 118 total hits, total bases. So they've shown some, double triples in this, but yeah,
I don't have it in front of me. I mean, how many runs a game are they at?
They've scored 57 runs in 8 games. So that's about seven runs a game.
That's winning baseball. I mean, seriously, if that's the crazy part. They have a losing record and their average runs has been over 7. Like that.
They scored 4 more runs than the opposition,
Right.
which is, 3-5 is not that. They've had a couple games where they won by,
Yeah.
5, 6 runs.
Yeah. But I mean, like, again, if you would, I mean, they were, I don't have it in front of me. I should, but I mean, last year, they didn't average 5 runs a game. And so it's been a big improvement on that side with all of these freshmen who have come in and done their thing. So, I think it's, I don't know. I think if you were to go and you were to say at the start of the year, and Johnny, tell me, let me ask you this question. What would you have preferred, right? If you're San Diego State and you have guys who can't hit, but you have good pitching early, or would you think that you'd rather have kind of bad pitching and good hitting because you believe that with the age and experience and who Sean Cole is, that can correct itself? Whereas if these guys couldn't hit, right?
Yeah, no, I agree. I think you'd rather have the solid pitching and then, or I'm sorry, I'd rather have the hitting be good because you have a lot of young players. If they can get make contact with the ball, get on bases, get some runs scored, and the pitching isn't as promising looking in the beginning of the season. Yeah, I agree. You expect Cole and his background to be able to kind of get that down, and you would feel more confident. You'd be, even despite sitting at a 3-5 record, you'd feel like going forward into the season, you'd be like, okay, if you can get this pitching under control, we can be a pretty well balanced team and win quite a few games.
Yeah. No,
Yeah.
I agree.
Yeah, definitely.
All right, guys, that was our kind of assessment on how the baseball season's gone. Obviously, in the beginning, we talked about the football schedule and some of the coaching and changes and what we're looking for as spring camp gets going. Obviously, other sports are going as well. Softball, the swim and dive team, we want to give them a shout out for their 3rd straight championship, Mountain West championship. And then obviously the basketball team is trying to finish up their regular season with 2 more games. So a lot of stuff going on the Mesa right now, and just trying to bring you a little bit more of it as well here. As always, thanks guys for listening. Johnny, do you want to give them your Twitter handle where people can find you?
Yeah, so Twitter and Instagram are both SD Sportsmen. Make sure you give me a follow. I'm going to be covering whatever these guys want me to. Big Aztec fans, so I'll go to anything. I'll cover some swim and dive, softball, baseball, whatever. Whatever you guys want. Follow me. Kind of tweet at me, see what you guys want covered, and I'm willing to do it.
Awesome. As always, we appreciate you guys liking, sharing, subscribing, following the podcast on your favorite platforms. We'll talk to you guys next time. You are listening to the SDSU podcast presented by the East Village Times with your hosts Andre Hagberdian and Paul Garrison.